Hey guys, it's model making time, and today we're building the Viggen from Airfix's 2026 Airfix Club kit. Now, the Airfix Club releases kits every year, and this year had the Viggen and Tiger Moth. If you haven't seen my video unboxing it already, go and check that one out, maybe even before you watch this one, because I have a look at what's exactly included in this set. It's called the Red Box, and part of that is this dual set with the Viggen and the Tiger Moth. The Viggen comes in the Show Must Go On scheme, an all-red scheme celebrating the Viggen's end of life with the unit transitioning to the Griffin. And I am so excited to build this. Of course, you know me, I love anything colourful, and this gave me another opportunity to test some new products. I've got a new airbrush from Neo Eco that they've sent me to try out. Not paid or anything, but they've sent me it to try. And I've got my gallery paints, which of course I've used quite a few times at this point, so I know I love them for bright colours. Plus, this kit has garnered a lot of controversy online, both for being an interesting and unusual choice, the older tooling, and there's something I haven't seen anyone talk about yet that I am not super happy about this kit. Now don't get me wrong, you'll see the end result, and I think I actually love this set. There's just something that irked me when I built it. Of course, before we go into everything about the kit, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with the latest and greatest videos and my live streams as well. And make sure to like the video and leave a comment down below. Have you bought this set? If you're on mobile too, you can hype this up. It helps the channel and helps the engagement, so make sure you do so if you can. Finally, if you want to support the channel and me making impulse purchases like me buying this the day it was announced, then please feel free to become a channel member. Hit the join button below. Right, let's have a little chat about this kit before we do the building then, shall we? Now, this kit is originally from 1971, and I'm not going to go into a full kit history, but it's basically just been re-released up until before, I think, around 2010. From what I could see, at least on Scalemates, the last release was 2008. I definitely remember seeing this a lot when I was a kid in the various boxings, and well, it's a set that was quite iconic because it was such an unusual and well-loved aircraft. But there is an issue with this kit. Well, a couple. Firstly, it's from 1971, so recessed panel lines were not really like the done thing back then, so this has raised panel linings. Now, for your girl, that's not an issue because I just don't care that much. I don't mind if a kit has raised panel linings. Is it as nice? No. It does not look as nice on the end model, but do I think it's bearable? Yeah, but for some people that's an instant rejection. The other issue with this kit is, I think I mentioned something in the unboxing about this, is that it's based on the prototype for the Viggen. So the overall shape is not what the production and especially later variants of the Viggen ended up looking like. There are toolings out there that are going to better represent the actual model. Now, there's some aircraft where I think you can get away with it, and I think this looks okay enough that I didn't mind it. There are some, like Starfix's Alpha Jet, that just don't really look like the Alpha Jet. But that raises a point that it's perhaps because I love the Alpha Jet that I know it looks so unusual with that set and with Matchbox's set, whereas other people probably build them and think they look fine. And I think that's something to remember here. What you think and what other people think are going to differ. For example, I don't mind this kit, I've really enjoyed building it, it's been quite a good vibe check, but for other people, the inaccuracies of the kit and the fact that the decals do not match the variant that you're given in the kit is just like a non-starter for them. So that's worth considering. The set for me cost £35, that included postage, which I think was like a £5 in itself, which I try not to factor in too much into the cost in my head because you have to pay that anyway, regardless, unless you're spending, I think it's more than £50 you get free then on Airfix. There wasn't really anything else I really wanted immediately to buy, and it was the day before the announcement of the new range, so I just went for it as is. I don't think £35 is too bad. The Tiger Moth you can get in Aldi and Lidl most years for £8 to £9 at various points during the year. Generally it sells for 10 to 12, so you're essentially paying what I would say is a reasonable price for two kits, plus postage and the unusual decals. Look, this isn't going to be for everyone. There is something else that really annoyed me about this kit, but I'm not going to tell you that until we get to it in the construction. So, with that in mind, this is an older tooling. It's not going to quite look like exactly like a Viggen should do, but I I think I enjoyed this kit, so let's go and have a look at me building this kit. The part count in this model is quite low, and so we're just going to cut off the fuselage, the wings, and get everything ready. Of course, that means priming the inside, and looking at pictures of the Viggen's cockpit online, it does seem mostly grey. I did use some masking putty to do the top part of the cockpit as well, but in the end I ended up repainting it by hand later, and stuck the two fuselage halves together with the seat put in place, and that's kind of it for the cockpit. I used a lot of tape during this build as well to make sure all the bits stuck together, and that probably was the most time consuming element. But I was trying to get this build done just in one go. It was a nice distraction from life and work, and so I just carried on. Aligning the wings onto the fuselage is quite easy, though I did notice when I put the top sections of the wings in, it did give me some gaps, so there was a bit of sort of finessing to get it all to fit in place properly, and adding in glue constantly just to make sure. It wasn't hard though, and I just made sure I used lots of tape to keep it all in place so that it all dried really nicely. But yeah, honestly, I don't think this was too bad of a build, but you'll see how much tape I actually added to this in the end. And when I add the top surfaces of the wings, I use more tape, as you can see there, to hold it in place. I then put on the front canards. I initially put them in upside down and then realised and swapped them back around. There were some gaps on this that I did use some filler, as you'll see later, but I thought I would get the whole thing finished, so popped the tail in as well. You'll notice I didn't put an engine in though, so we'll go back to that later. But before I do that, it's time to put some nose weight in. I used super glue to put some nose weight in and just filled it with as much as I could before realising actually you can pop it through the cockpit as well, so I added some more in. I then had to add in the engine, which I completely forgot to put in, so I had to rip apart all of my hard work and put it back in. Serves me right for not reading the instructions properly. Once that was done, I then decided to fill some of the gaps. I was just using little shaved bits of plastic to fill in the gaps and act as sort of a makeshift putty. It worked okay, but there were probably still some gaps, and you can see me just putting off some of the filing dust on there just to fill it up. I'm calling this the cheese grater method, where you sand down a bit of sprue, get some plastic and fill it in. It does seem to work for really small gaps, but it's not something I would recommend for larger gaps, as you will need some proper sprue glue for that, or just some filler. Overall, I did find this model went together nicely, and you do have to put in some of the small parts like the air brakes and spoiler, but yeah, honestly, it's a really easy build. It's mainly just making sure you sand down the parts so they're all flush and it all goes in really easily, really nicely. I did like the landing gear bay, that it is just one part that just pops in and then you stick the wheels into that. It also means that you could just spray the whole thing, paint it all, and then add in the landing gear afterwards if you wanted to. I opted not to do that, just to make sure I got the edges of it the right colour as well. And yeah, honestly, this was a really nice build. I literally did it one night after work with no hassle, no fuss. Also, fishing weights, fantastic for holding up the cockpit, the landing gear doors. Turns out, really great way to make sure that they stay level the whole way through. So before we go into like painting and decaling, I just want to say, I think the construction was fine. Like, I actually enjoyed this. I built this pretty much in one day. I just sat down and went, yeah, let's just build this. I'd had a really rough week at work, and I mean rough. And I enjoyed just sitting down, listening to Hilary Duff's new music, and just vibing my way through building this, and it was honestly a joy. Sometimes these older kits, whilst the details might not be as good as we would hope, the overall feel of the construction is so much more simple that it's a joy. Now, I do want to preface this as well and say that I'm not putting the pilot in just because, frankly, I couldn't be bothered. There is one included. You can bid it in if you want to. I just didn't want to because I just wanted to build the aircraft. So bear that in mind when you see my end result. But yeah, I finished this giant red kit. I did need to do a lot of sanding, and you'll notice white on top of the model, and wherever I've done a lot of sanding, there was a little bit of filler, but I mainly just used bits of sprue to fill it in. And yeah, then it was time to do the painting, which was quite funny because essentially I prime it in white to then paint it back to a similar red. Yeah, let's go and have a look. onto painting. And so, as I think I've said, if I haven't, I'll say it later, this is an airbrush that got sent to me from Neo Eco. This is the SJ85 Transformer. It has like a little pull ring at the front that you can change it to like a big fan spray or a more concentrated spray. I've tried both. You do have to use a much higher PSI. I have found that for both of the modes, to be honest, but it is great. Now you're seeing it in sort of one mode at the moment, and you'll see it in the other mode when I do the rad. I really want to preface this, and yes, they sent this airbrush to me for free. No, they've not. Like, I literally don't even have to make a video on it. But I always just try and show my honest experience. Is this an airbrush I'll use for detail? Probably not. But you are going to see me use this in a lot of builds going forward. It's quite great for just getting on a lot of colour really quickly, and I have used it on a display team aircraft that's coming up in a future video, so stay tuned for that. The paint I'm using is Gallery again, their Kaleido paint range. This is just their white primer, which when they asked me what I wanted when they sent me the paints originally, I asked for a large bottle of grey, a smaller black and smaller white, and I regret that because I've used so much white. We are then just using the Shine Red colour. This is a colour I've used on a few aircraft already, I think. It's not their just default red, it's specifically a high shine gloss red. I would say it's probably, I don't know, in some brands maybe it's like Ferrari red or something, I can't quite remember. But it's a really shiny red, it's lush. It is quite funny though that we've literally just gone from red plastic to white primer to then back to red. I did paint the whole thing in one go. It's part of the reason I put the landing gear down, is that I can literally sit it down and it just dries really nicely. You can see I'm getting a much wider spray on this, and I'm coating the whole thing really quickly and easily. I did have to do some touch-ups with brush, particularly where I left some finger marks when I hadn't quite dried, which is my fault. And I did go over a couple of coats with the paint, which is normal anyway, but to be honest, if I had done it properly, it probably would have been one coat, but that's my fault. With the primer as well, initially I did have to rub a bit off and redo it, and that's just because there was clearly some release, some like mold release on there. That's my fault too, but overall really easy paint job, and that's kind of it. Oh yeah, so also as we go into like the decaling, you'll notice I got a bandage here. I really injured myself. So you might notice my finger looks painful. I want to assure you that it's been treated, it's fine, it just doesn't look great. So yeah, sorry about that. Alongside my eczema, I just did that too, so great. So I've not done the undercarriage or anything yet, but I'm just putting the decals on, and these ghosts are a bit fiddly to get in the right place. I was trying to get them as best I could, but they fold a lot and they have to go over some bumpy bits, and it's a bit difficult, but once you've done one, they are quite simple. It's just taking your time, being really careful, make sure they stay really damp, and you get a really nice finish like this. And then you're just repeating that 4 times, and on the tail as well. I didn't record myself doing the tail in error, and you do also have this text to put on the side. I will say that this text, it's really quite hard actually, because I kept finding the N, and it's on both sides, the tail part of the N just kept flipping round. I know it's not quite in focus and you can't quite see it, but that was the hardest bit of the decals. I then had to paint the undercarriage, pop the undercarriage in, and then give it a quick blast of some gloss varnish, or Gallery again, and that was it. It was really easy to do. Obviously I painted the engine and the intakes as well beforehand. So we finished it, and I put all the decals on, and I was sat there and I was like, there's meant to be the strut tank. They even include the decals which have the 3 Swedish crowns on for you to put on the back of the drop tank. And I was like, where is this? And I didn't look at a part, and I was looking through the instructions, so I was like, none of these bits match up. And that's where I realised in the instructions, drop tank is not included, or centerline tank is not included. 3D printed parts are available. Now, I know a lot of people have 3D printers. If I had seen this in advance, I probably could have got someone to build it for me. But I didn't, and I just kind of assumed everything would be in the kit because that's quite normal these days. I'm probably going to reach out to someone to do it, and I'll do a post on my sort of YouTube feed and socials when I actually get it finished. But like, I feel conflicted on this, because if it wasn't part of the scheme and didn't include the decals for it, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine, it's an optional extra you're giving us to print. Woo, slay, great. But the fact this comes as part of the decal scheme and then you can't finish it without a 3D printer, which, let's just consider the fact that a lot of people live in shared accommodation, a lot of people don't have room for it, a lot of people just can't afford 3D printing. It hits barriers in a way, and that makes me sad. I get that these kits are never going to be like super cost-effective kits, and quite often they're reissues of kits with new decals, and I don't have an issue with that. I actually love this set. It's just that bit made me really annoyed, because I'd put all this effort into building this kit, not realising, because I was just following the instructions, got to doing the decals, put all the decals on, and then went, great, I can't even finish the kit. I think it still looks good, don't get me wrong, I'm still happy I bought it, I'm still happy I've made it, but that added a dampener on it. So let's go and have a look at the Viggen in the show must go on scheme, popping off. Well, what do you think? Leave a comment down below to let me know if you think I did a good job. And, well, like the video too. Well, hopefully you'll like it. As for what I think on this, I feel really conflicted at this point. I love the kit, I think it was great, and I'm not bothered that it's not a super accurate representation. But on the flip side, firstly, you've given a 3D part to complete the kit, but given me the decals even though I don't have the part and I don't have a 3D printer, and frankly I can't really just afford to buy one immediately. Though if any companies out there want to send me a 3D printer so I can fix this, hook me up. But in addition to that, I'm sort of like, well, if you could do the 3D parts for that, why haven't you done the other 3D parts to potentially rectify this kit? It just, I don't know, it's really confusing. Look, the backlash online saying this isn't old school doesn't bother me. I think the vintage classics can go into like these club kits. I think the club kits are a celebration of Airfix past and future and can have anything in them, and it doesn't bother me. In the context of now having the range launch, I have questions. After a lot of people saw this, I saw a lot of comments on my videos or online. I looked through other people's comments and I saw a lot of, great, hopefully this means new toolings of Saab aircraft or vintage classics. And whilst I wasn't really expecting a new tool per se, I was hoping we'd get vintage classics, and we do get the Draken as part of the Swedish Air Force set. Love that. But why isn't the Viggen in that set? That confuses me a little bit. That would have made sense to me. And also the Gripen isn't in that set either, which would make sense as like the future. So like that confuses me a little bit. It could be around who owns the toolings for the Gripen, and I get that, and if that's the case, it is what it is, but it does confuse me a little bit. It also confuses me that they then haven't released these as like their own sets. Apparently Archie is enraged by this and is meowing at me too, so you can join me for a bit. But yeah, it confuses me that the Viggen isn't released as its own vintage classic either. I know it wouldn't have the same markings, but it would have made sense to me to offer it to people at least in standard camo or something, or as a prototype. I don't know, I'm not really sure on what's happened there. And I want to say, like, I'm not upset with the range launch this year. I think it's genuinely an amazing range, and I'm sure we're going to get some really unique and interesting tools throughout the year. I find this confusing, and I kind of understand some of the frustrations online. Will it stop me supporting Airfix? Absolutely not. I love the brand overall. I think most of their decisions make a lot of sense, and I think this on its own would have made sense if it was then included in that Swedish box set, or if they just included 3D parts to correct the kit and for the drop tank, or just not included any of it and done it as a straight rebox with the new decals. It's just confusing to me. I don't really know. Would I recommend this kit? Yes, I think I probably still would, with the caveats that you go into it with all of that knowledge, that it does include a part that needs to be 3D printed if you want to do the complete experience, I guess. It's not going to be accurate because it's based on the prototype and has raised panel linings because it's a 1970s tooling. I think if you go into that with it, you will love it. I think the build was buttery. It was lovely. Yes, there were some gaps occasionally that I had to fill or just go back over with glue a few times until it molded properly. But honestly, I think it was fine. I built it so quickly and so easily. I enjoyed it overall. I think it was great for me just being able to test out this new airbrush, which is definitely geared more towards automotive model makers, where you just do sort of a coat in a colour. But it was perfect for this, for doing the primer and then for the red afterwards. It was fantastic. And there's not really a lot of afterwork you need to do in this. So honestly, I kind of like the kit, despite its downfalls. Agree with me or disagree with me? Leave me a comment down below and let me know, and like the video to help it be more visible to people so they can be aware of what they're getting into with this set. And if you want to be kept up to date with my latest and greatest videos, hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want to support me buying random kits, improving my equipment, improving my production and all that sort of jazz, then become a channel member, hit the join button down below. You can get shouted out at the end of each video as well if you are an advanced kit level member. If you're on mobile as well, make sure to hype the video. It really helps boost it in the search rankings and in the algorithm overall. If you want to join a friendly community of model makers, make sure to join my Discord. The link is in the description below. And if you're watching this in a January or before then, approaching a February, remember there's French February each year as well, which we are doing in the Discord too. Again, link is in the description. Thank you so much for joining me as I built this kit, and I hope you have a lovely day no matter where you are, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! A big shout out goes to all of my channel members. You've really helped keep this possible, and thanks to a lot of support from Crazy Loacher, we've got a lot of new members. So at the moment, we've got Jim Brook, Darren May, Mark F, Exploring Unseen, Jock's Model Bench, Baz P, Graham McRobert, Bernie Hagyard, Patrick Clark, Paul Wiltshire Models, The Nexus Models, Arn Jon Balderson, To Boulder Goes Model Works, Model Making John, Gillian Hall, Rob Taylor, Phil, Joe Leal, Zoltan Vinter, Marcus Cranfield, Star Trek Props and Models, Taggers 365, Bobby G, Dafty Duck, Bob Albridge and Genevieve Albridge, David Barber, Jeff's Dioramas, and two longest supporters at this tier, Explosive Water and Crazy Loacher. And again, thank you for all of the support with the extra channel members you gifted to the channel, Crazy Loacher. It means the world. And if you've liked what you've seen here today, make sure to subscribe to the channel to get up to date with my latest and greatest videos. And there's another recommended video here just for you. Have a great day, wherever you are. Bye!